So, I finished yet another book. I finished A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, narrated by Simon Callow. He did a good job. I think he was going for a proper British feel, like storytelling feel, and I think he hit it right on the nose. I very much enjoyed it. Although the book itself, I didn't really understand it. I didn't really know what was going on. Dickens's prose is amazing. I want to read a couple excerpts for you. I'm really impressed with how Dickens is able to paint a portrait just through words in your mind and really explain what's going on in a very understandable order. I just want to read a really short bit for you. She had moved from the wall of the garret, very near to the bench on which he sat. There was something awful in his unconsciousness of the figure that could have put out its hand and touched him as he stooped over his laborer. Not a word was spoken, not a sound made. She stood like a spirit beside him, and he bent over his work. It happened at length that he had occasion to change the instrument in his hand for his shoemaker's knife. It lay on that side of him which was not the side on which she stood. He had taken it up, and was stooping to work again, when his eyes caught the skirt of her dress. He raised them and saw her face. The two spectators started forward, but she stayed them with a motion of her hand. She had no fear of him striking at her with the knife, though they had. That's cool, because I can see precisely what he's, in my mind, I can see precisely what he's intending for me to see. And he set it up in an order where it all makes sense, and it flows together very, very smoothly. One could say he's quite good at what he does. Let's see, the other bit I wanted to blacksmith. There's a bit where Dr. Manette and Mr. Lorry are discussing the plight of one such a gentleman. And maybe not plight might not be the word. My dear Manette, I am anxious to have your opinion, in confidence, on a very curious case in which I am deeply interested. That is to say, it is very curious to me, perhaps. To your better information, it may be less so. Glancing at his hands, which were discolored by his late work, the doctor looked troubled and listened attentively. He had already glanced at his hands more than once. Dr. Manette, said Mr. Lorry, touching him affectionately on the arm. The case is the case of a particularly dear friend of mine. Pray give your mind to it, and advise me well for his sake, and above all, for his daughters. It is his daughters, my dear Manette. If I understand, said the doctor in a subdued tone, some mental shock. Yes, be explicit, said the doctor. Spare no detail. Mr. Lorry saw that they understood one another, and proceeded. My dear Manette, it is the case of an old and prolonged shock, of great acuteness and severity to the affections, the feelings, the, as you express it, the mind. The mind. It is the case of shock under which the sufferer was borne down. One cannot say for how long, because I believe he cannot calculate the time himself, and there are no other means of getting at it. It is the case of a shock from which the sufferer recovered, by a process that he cannot trace himself, as I once heard him publicly relate in a striking manner. It is the case of a shock from which he has recovered so completely as to be a highly intelligent man, capable of close application of mind and great exertion of body, and constantly making fresh additions to his stock of knowledge, which was already very large, But unfortunately there has been, he paused and took a deep breath, a slight relapse. The doctor, in a low voice, asked, "How long the duration?" 9 days and nights. "How did it show itself?" "I infer," glancing at his hands again, "in the resumption of some old pursuit connected with the shock." "That is the fact." "Now, did you see him? Now, did you ever see him?" asked the doctor, distinctly and collectedly, though in the same low voice. "Engaged in that pursuit originally?" "Once." "And when the relapse fell on him, was he in most respects, or in all respects, as he was then?" "I think in all respects." "You spoke of his daughter. Does his daughter know of the relapse?" "No, it has been kept from her, and I hope it will always be kept from her. It is known only to myself, and to one other who may be trusted." The doctor grasped his hand and murmured, "That was very kind. That was very thoughtful." Mr. Lorry grasped his arm in return, and neither of them spoke for a little while. "Now, my dear Manette," said Mr. Lorry, at length, in his most considerate and most affectionate way, "I am a mere man of business, and unfit to cope with such intricate and difficult matters. I do not possess the kind of information necessary. I do not possess the kind of intelligence I want guiding. There is no man in this world on whom I could rely so for the right guidance as on you. Tell me, how does this relapse come about? Is there danger of another? Could the repetition of it be prevented? How should a repetition be treated? How does it come about at all? What can I do for my friend? No man ever can have more desirous in his heart to serve a friend than I am to serve mine, if I know how." I'm going to stop there. This goes on for a couple pages, but I think you get the point. The point is, Mr. Lorry, in fear of offending his dear friend, Dr. Manette, he's talking about the situation that Dr. Manette finds himself in third person, so he can better examine how to treat his dear friend. So he has substituted. It's basically like, it's like when you say, "Oh, I'm asking for a friend," when clearly you're asking for yourself. Or in this case, he's asking about a friend, but he's intending to ask about the doctor's own condition, because he cares for this doctor and he wants to help him. I just thought that was a neat little literary trick. Neat little bit I just kind of wanted to share. Anywho, the book itself, like I said, I didn't really get it. It's there's mystery, there's conspiracy, there's a revolution, there's relationships and marriage, and there's a lot in the book, but it just kind of starts somewhere in the story, kind of at the beginning, slowly fills us in on information as they go about their lives, and then it just kind of ends. And I couldn't pick out what precisely that Dickens was intending to profess with his book. Like some books, Gulliver's Travels is kind of a political commentary. Another example would be any of Orwell's works. Animal Farm in 1984, obviously. Some are Stephen King's. He writes thrillers and mystery novels and murder mysteries for the thrill, for the fun of it. But I couldn't quite place what the point of this book was. Okay, so I did a little bit of research on other people's interpretations on the book, and it appears that this was a dramatization of the Revolution, of the French Revolution. The point of the book was simply to tell a story. A romanticized version, of course, but still a good story. I'm rather disappointed, I think, in myself. Because I don't know if it's a lack of understanding or a lack of interest. But throughout the whole book, I just was fairly disinterested in the going-ons of the main characters. I think chalking this up to a change of tastes and change of interests, at least that I hold. Maybe a differing of interests would be a better way to put it. A differing of interests in the subject matter that Dickens covers in this novel just doesn't interest me. And the dramatization was a bit, well, it was very dry. Yeah. I don't know. I think it was well written. I think it's a fine book. I think, yeah, it's just, I definitely would not say it's one of my favorites. I definitely would not read it again. Maybe if there was like a movie or an adaptation somehow, I would give it a go, but yeah. A little disappointed in this one. But can't all be winners. So, next I gotta finish, I'm halfway through Gulliver's Travels. I've been putting this one off for a while, so I gotta finish that one. So that'll be my next, hopefully, book gush. If I remember it correctly, I did very much enjoy Lilliput. So, yeah, talk to you then.